Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a
What's
light
your
on
story?
incredible impact. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Sessions. I'm your host for today's episode, and today I'm really excited to be speaking with Vicki de Klerk, who is the Executive Director of the Validation Training Institute at VTI. How are you today?
I'm really excellent. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's really great to be speaking with you and very excited for this conversation. So why don't we dive right in? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a nurse by training. I am 66 years old. I have two adult daughters, and I am the executive director, as you said, which I took over from my mother, Naomi File, in 2014.
Wow.
And her story is quite amazing. My mother was born in Munich, Germany in 1932 and came to the United States as a 4-year-old Jewish refugee from Germany. And her dad became the director of a big Jewish nursing home in Cleveland, Ohio, the Montefiore Home for the Aged. And there they grew up. She and her sister and her parents, they had 4 rooms in the nursing home. And so as a little girl, her friends were the old people. And that so informed her that later in her life, she went to school, she got a degree in social work. She came back to Cleveland, Ohio, and started working in that same nursing home where she grew up. And that in the 60s and 70s of the last decade, whatever it's called, in the 60s and 70s, she developed the validation method. She did research. You can find old research from 1967, 1973, where she described a new way of connecting and communicating with people who had cognitive decline. Back then, they were called senile psychotic. But those were the people she loved, and those were the people she connected to in an incredible way. And in 1982, she sort of codified her method, the validation method, in her first book. And then it started rolling. People asked her to explain. She would go to a workshop. She did over 1,000 workshops in her life, just in the United States. And then another 1,000 in Europe, Asia, South America. I think she covered every continent except Antarctica. And in 1989, I sort of got sucked into the business because she asked me to help her revise her book. I said, sure. I was a young mother. I was not working at that time, so I thought I'll help my mom. And I started editing. And by the end, I thought, I know validation. And I was asked to do a little presentation at a nursing home with a bunch of professionals. And I went in all sure of myself, and I did my whole spiel. And there was a very experienced nurse sitting in the front row like this. And she said, that's very nice. But what do you do when Mr. Smith spits at you? And I ran to the book. And in that second, I realized I knew nothing. I had no practice. And it was at that moment, I guess, a pivotal moment for me personally. Either I dive into this or I don't dive into this. And I dove. So I did 2 things. One, I went back to school and became a nurse as a 40-year-old mother of 2, which was outstanding experience and gave me an anchor in in nursing in the
Mm.
field. And I started working in a nursing home and practicing validation. And that's when I learned cognitive knowledge is not enough. You have to practice. You have to try it. You have to make mistakes. You have to be corrected and stay on the path. And that's how I learned validation. Slowly, it's been growing over the years, and now we've got 24 training centers in
Mhm.
14 countries, which is pretty good,
Yeah,
actually.
definitely. That's amazing. So, for our users who don't know what the validation method is, can you share a little bit of an overview or
Sure.
summary of what it is?
So, very simple in one sentence. The validation method is a way to connect and communicate with people, older adults, who
Hmm.
have cognitive decline.
Hmm.
That means Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia. My mom was the first person to say, we have to step into their shoes. We can't make them better.
Hmm.
It's an issue in the brain. We can't heal them. There's no cure. So, what we have to do is accept them as they are, understand that what they are doing has importance, and these
Hmm.
people need respect and honor. And we have to move to their side of the street.
Yeah.
So, that is validation, really, in a nutshell.
Hmm. That's amazing. I mean, I'm sure for families also of individuals who experience this type of cognitive decline, it's very difficult to to put yourself in their shoes, but it's very important. I think it's important for everybody, for all individuals, to be treated with empathy and to walk a mile in their shoes, so to speak.
Exactly, exactly.
So can you
Like,
tell us a little bit about VTI?
sure. VTI was founded in 1982. It's a not for
Hmm.
profit company based in the United States.
Hmm.
Um, Tiny budget. A lot of people work for VTI out of love,
Hmm.
including myself. My goal is to get my mother's legacy going so that it continues on beyond my mother, beyond myself, well into the future. We try to serve the needs of the user, and the end user really are the old people, the
Hmm.
older adults. And how we serve them is to train their caregivers, whether it's
Hmm.
formal caregivers or informal caregivers.
Right.
Families, we've got courses for families, we've got courses for young people who want to better communicate with their parents or
Hmm.
grandparents. We've got trainings for professionals. I'm currently, and this is something I'm very excited about, I'm working on a new training which will be all online uh, and what we call asynchronous learning, meaning you
Hmm.
can do it on demand. And this is a special training just for doctors,
Okay.
physicians,
Hmm.
who absolutely need to learn how to better communicate with older
Definitely.
adults with or without cognition issues, but especially with cognition issues. I don't think they are taught in medical school how to work with how to communicate with this
Hmm.
population.
Yeah, and it's so important, and it's definitely something that we talk about here at accessiBe, that you know we will all age, and it's often a population that's forgotten about when we're talking about accessibility, um, whether that's within the medical community or digital accessibility, and it's very important because it will impact all of us. Um,
We either die or we get older. Those are our
Right.
choices.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us about a memorable moment or story from your time, either working with the validation method or at VTI, that has left a lasting impact on you?
Yeah. This goes back a few years to when I was working in a nursing home,
Hmm.
and there was an old woman, and she, sort of heavy set woman, she never talked. She hadn't talked for months and months, at least not since I was there. And she would lumber through the hallways, and she would gather things and put them in her voluminous dress pockets. And she would knock on doors, sort of slow, heavy. And I thought, how am I going to connect with this lady? So I used the validation technique of mirroring, which means you have to slow your pace to match her
Hmm.
pace, get the weight going in the right way, and walk next to her. And I did that for a minute, and suddenly I felt heavy. And I went, oh, it's so heavy. And she stopped, and she looked me straight in the eye and said, yes. And we
Wow.
had eye
That's amazing.
contact. I'll never forget it.
Mhm.
Never, ever forget it. That was one of those moments where you, by moving into their world, you connect in ways you don't expect.
Mhm. Yeah, that's truly amazing.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah, it was a good moment.
so, what's one thing about the community that you specifically work with, the older adults,
Mhm.
that you wish people knew about?
Aha. Okay, this is a big thing. Um, Stop expecting people to behave the same when they're 80 and 90 as when they were 20 and 30. A 90-year-old brain is smaller than a 20-year-old brain. Just like the kidneys, just like saggy skin or white
Hmm.
hair, our brain ages along with the rest of us, and
Hmm.
short term memory goes. This is not an illness. We tend to medicalize things too much.
Yeah.
Uh, that would be my big thing. Not every person who has cognitive decline has Alzheimer's disease or Lewy body's dementia or any of those other disease processes. Sometimes cognitive decline is just a function of having lived.
Right. Yeah, that's really amazing and definitely something that we all should remember, specifically when dealing with or when, working with or visiting or speaking with older adults. And I think it comes back to empathy at the end of the day. Like we've said it before and saying it again, but walking in somebody else's shoes, putting yourself in that position, it's so important, and can really impact, like the story that you just shared, um, somebody's day, or have that connection with somebody. So it's really amazing. And where do you think are the biggest current gaps in businesses with prioritizing access and inclusion for older adults?
Keep in mind that when you build communities for older adults, that it's their home, not just a place of work, and that if you make it a home, people will feel more comfortable, both the older
Mhm.
adults as well as staff. And if you include everybody, it becomes a happier place.
And that's so important. Happiness is so important.
Yep. Even if somebody is a complainer, even if somebody can't be happy, having the space to express those emotions lightens it. That's a validation principle, that painful emotions, when expressed to somebody who is really listening and accepting, those feelings will lessen. And that's an important principle, because so often we try to block negative feelings. Oh, don't cry, it'll be okay. It's the worst thing you can say to somebody.
It is. It definitely is.
Or, oh, don't be angry. You don't have to be angry. Well, nobody has to feel anything.
Right.
But we do.
We definitely do.
And there needs to be a place where people can be accepted as they are.
That is so very true. Vicki, it really has been such a pleasure speaking with you today. I know I was really touched by this conversation, and I'm sure our viewers and our listeners will be too. If anybody would like to get in touch with you about the validation method, how could they go about doing so?
Contact me through the Validation Training Institute. If you go to our website, you'll be able to send me an email through that. I do want to do one plug at the end.
Sure, of course.
And it's not a selling thing, it's an opportunity. We are hosting a World Congress on February 21st from noon till 4 o'clock Eastern Time, US. And it's called The Person Comes First. And we're having 3-hour-long sessions with a half-hour break in between. And we've got the most amazing speakers. And I'm so excited about it. In the first session, my mom, Naomi File, who is 90 years old, will be talking about what it's like to live with cognitive decline.
Wow.
And her speaking partner is a 64-year-old woman who also has cognitive decline. And I'll be asking both of them, what does it mean to live life to the fullest? It's going to be so cool.
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely add that to the show notes as well.
And it's free. Totally free.
That is definitely an important factor as well.
And people can come in and out as they choose. It's going to be a wonderful Congress.
Amazing. So we'll definitely add that to the show notes and all of the information for anybody who wants to get in touch. It really, once again, was just such a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much.